The last time I bought a latte, I stood at the counter at Phil's for probably 40 seconds too long after I paid. Just standing there. The barista handed me my cup and I said thank you, and I walked to the little wooden ledge by the window and I thought, my mother would not understand this. Not in a dramatic way. Not like she'd be angry. Just, she wouldn't understand it. She would look at a $4.75 oat milk latte the way you look at a word in a language you don't speak. A kind of blankness. Not judgment, exactly. Just a total failure to compute why this was the thing I chose. And even though she wasn't there, I felt her standing behind me anyway. That feeling, that little flinch when you spend money on something small and nice for yourself, has a name in behavioral finance. It's called a scarcity mindset. And I used to think that meant I'd grown up poor, or that my family had suffered in some concrete, measurable way. But that's not quite it. My family wasn't destitute by the time I was a kid. My dad had a stable job. We owned our house in the East Bay. We weren't scraping. And yet money in my house had the texture of something fragile, something that could disappear. The scarcity mindset isn't just about having less than enough. It's about learning, deep in your nervous system, not in your head, that resources are unreliable, that comfort is temporary, that you should never, ever get used to having something, because the moment you get used to it is the moment you're vulnerable to losing it. I asked my mum once why she saved the rubber bands from broccoli. She had a whole little ball of them in the kitchen drawer, next to the takeout menus and the dead batteries she also saved. She looked at me like it was a strange question. "In case I need one," she said. I pushed a little. "But you never use them." She shrugged and closed the drawer. She grew up in Guangzhou in the 60s and 70s. I don't know the full shape of it because she doesn't talk about it. That's its own whole episode, the money, silence, the way that generation just doesn't explain itself. But I know there was a period when her family had essentially nothing. When my grandmother raised 4 kids on almost no money during the Cultural Revolution, when whatever you had could be taken, when you didn't make plans, because plans assumed a stability that didn't exist. You saved the rubber bands. You saved the plastic bags. You reused the foil. Not because you needed to now, but because need could come back. Because need had come back before. My mum didn't choose her relationship with money. It was installed in her, by circumstance, by history, by watching her own mother move through the world in a constant state of low-grade material vigilance. And then she came to the United States in her late 20s, and she worked, and things got more stable, but the software didn't update. The feelings didn't get the memo. So she still saves the rubber bands, and she still looks at a $4.75 latte like it's a small, baffling act of recklessness. And I absorbed it. Not the rubber band thing specifically, but the feeling underneath it. That money is not for pleasure. That spending on yourself is a little bit suspect. That comfort should be earned in some serious way before you're allowed to want it. These are money scripts. That's the actual term, money scripts. The unconscious beliefs about money that we inherit from our families and carry into adulthood without ever quite examining them. Mine said, be careful. Mine said, don't get used to this. Mine said, that latte is proof of something slightly wrong with you. The thing is, I have a stable income. I have an emergency fund. I max out my Roth IRA every year, which, for a long time, I also felt guilty about, which is its own kind of absurdity. Feeling guilty for saving for your own retirement, but we'll get to that. I'm not in financial danger. And yet the feeling of danger keeps showing up anyway, because feelings like this don't respond to bank balances. They respond to early learning. They respond to what got wired in before you had the language to examine it. So when I decided I was actually going to do something about this, I didn't start with a budget overhaul or a big declaration. I started very small and very concrete. I had been telling myself for 2 years that I should increase my 401k contribution above the employer match. I always had a reason not to. I might need that cash flow. What if something comes up? It feels irresponsible to lock money away. Which, when I actually wrote those thoughts down, I could see. That's the scarcity script talking. That's not analysis. That's fear wearing a sensible outfit. I went into my company's benefits portal on a Tuesday afternoon. HR had sent a link and I'd left the email unread for 11 days. I opened it and for a moment I almost closed it again because something in me said, "Not now. Wait until you're more sure. What if you need it?" And I just didn't listen to that part. I bumped my contribution up 3%. That was it. I didn't transform my entire financial life. I changed one number on one screen. My take-home went down by about $90 a paycheck. It felt scary for a week and then it didn't feel like anything at all. But what that small thing did, psychologically, was start to move something. Because the scarcity mindset gets stronger when you act like it's true. When you hoard and restrict and flinch, you're telling your nervous system, yes, the threat is real, we should keep being afraid. When you take a small, intentional action that your fear said not to take, and the world doesn't end, it creates this tiny little gap, this slight loosening, not a cure. Not a transformation, just a loosening. I still feel the thing it feels sometimes. I probably will for a long time. And I've stopped trying to argue myself out of it in the moment, because you can't reason with a feeling that old. What I try to do instead is see it clearly. Oh, that's the script. That's my mum's software running on my hardware. That's Guangzhou in 1968 showing up at a coffee counter in San Francisco in 2024. And then do what I actually want to do anyway, which is sometimes buy the coffee. That doesn't make me ungrateful. That doesn't make me ungrateful for what my parents built. It doesn't erase the very real reason my mother saved things, or undo the intelligence of that survival. She kept her family safe with those habits. They worked for the world she was in. I just don't live in that world. And part of honoring what she went through is not carrying the wound further than I have to. If this hit close to home, you're not alone, and you're not stuck repeating it. Subscribe for more stories about money, family, and the quiet patterns that shape how we live. See you in the next one.